All right. Thank you all so much for coming out to celebrate the launch of This Book Will Not Save You. I'm really excited to be here with two very dear friends and really awesome creative colleagues, CM Green and Kavar. They're going to read a little bit and then I'm going to take us home. And I don't think we actually agreed upon a reading order. So I'm going to arbitrarily decide that we're going to go in the order on the poster. And I'm going to hand it over to Kavar.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Nat, for having me and CM for reading with me, and to both Andrea and MG and all of those listening to the recording for being here. Nat helped me celebrate the launch of my debut novel, Failure to Comply, back in August. And that was a really wonderful experience. And so it's really an honor to be back here, kind of returning the favor. Um, this reading, I am not going to be reading from Failure to Comply. Instead, I'm going to be reading a couple of exclusives from my debut full-length poetry collection, Differential Diagnosis, which is coming out in the spring of 2026. I'm going to start with a poem that has been published elsewhere, and then I will move into a couple of poems that you will not be able to read officially for a year and a half or so. And Matt, do I have like 10 minutes, or how long would you recommend?
Yeah, 10 minutes is perfect.
Okay, awesome. I'll keep it to that then. All right. And so I'm going to start with the titular poem, which is Differential Diagnosis 1. There are 12 differential diagnosis poems in all in this book, but this is just the first. And this was published first in Electric Lit. Differential diagnosis. There is a door at the center of myself. That door belies the existence of many other doors. This trend knows no sign of stopping. I dislike it, but it must be. I am really made of little vaults, vaults the color of my insides. My doors lead to the vaults. When things are not my fault, I step through the door and close it in my wake. And in my wake, I close my eyes and say, well, none of this was my vault. Luckily, my vault is safe and full of goods, and only I can see it. And all you see is text, but I can see the outline of my vault. My goods are little pieces, they never exceed my skin. I stack them every volume, fewer than the last. My goods do not breathe oxygen. When I look, I cannot find my goods. My goods are gods whose holes I can't fit a finger. I am chronically holy. This is not healthy under any circumstances. I call my goods precious gods because I cannot see them. When I look, I find my subtle vault alone and faith the difference, like I just believe electrons fear arrest by laws of physics. Okay, that was the first one. And now I'm going to move to, let's see. Thank you, MG. I'm just reading the chat as I scroll along. And so this one is one of my poem slash prose chunks titled Confessional. And this is one that has not been published anywhere and will be published with this book. On the eve of my commission, I read a vampire book, and it was comforting because when you think about it, being a vampire is just a big old eating disorder. There were just then many unknowns in my life and even more diversions, but they were good and made me everything but dead in a way twice as killable. Many theories exist as to what happens when vampires can't get any blood. And if they get human food instead of looking them up, I invite you to think up a summer. You've forgotten how to leave. You've forgotten how to heat. You've even forgotten how to masturbate or whether or not you're supposed to. You traverse the raw summer landscape, find a proud bird. The bird gets you shit-faced, except you're sober. The white slucks no blood, but still comes from a body. All right. I'm still working these out, so I appreciate your patience as I find the right rhythm with a lot of these. Next, I'll read one of my favorites. It's called Diagnostician's Note, and it was published in Mudroom magazine. Thank you for all the love, you guys. This is great. I love it. Is great. Okay, vampire eating disorder is great, and this was written long before the Interview with the Vampire TV series came out. And I also have never seen that series. I'm just, whenever there's something like eating disorder themed, my friends, graciously inform me as sort of as a form of connection. And I actually think it's really funny and appreciate it. But yeah, apparently there are some ED vampire bitches out there. And I understand them. I get it. So next, I'm going to read Diagnostician's Note, first published in Mudroom and later reprinted in Protean. I love this one. This one is kind of at the center of the manuscript. Diagnostician's Note. Some are learned in the ways of panting. Some leather gestures wail. You are a student of your own body. Pleasure the selected photograph. Derive the side table. She can't stand in her obstinate obstinacy. Blank is bleeding from the bedroom. Ask me, what constitutes a victimless crime? Nothing is benign when laced with your spinal warfare. You are not immune to conceptual frameworks, not even the ones that bring out your eyes. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Oh, here's another fun one. Yeah, you are not immune to conceptual frameworks is one that I like think about regularly in the shower, and I'm like, damn bitch, you came up with that. Like, that's awesome. Um, okay, I'm gonna have a bit of a silly one. And it was also published in Electric Lit, and it's called Have You Seen My Autism? Hee hee ho ho. Um, okay. Have you seen my autism? It all started when I was born. Worse yet, it started on the taxpayer dime, in the bathwater, in the atmosphere, even in the baby, if a baby can get tall enough for college. It's true, I am autism, but only when you ask nicely. My autism is gentle yet growing carnivorous. Like Medusa, my autism is something you maybe shouldn't see. But if you do, you should write a book about. Someone told me if a flower opens wide enough, it just becomes a backwards flower. Sanded teeth become new teeth, re-narrated to points. With enough training, I'm sure I can make a point myself. I can settle on a sex for this, my waspish swarm. Be whatever gentle intends itself to mean, though I've been nouns that would kill you instantly. I am autism if you're willing, autism if you're down. Gentle, I'm a horny orchid impervious to pest control. This autism's so long, it's forgotten how to stop. Okie dokie. Let's see, probably have time for like one more. So I'm trying to find a particularly juicy one. Okay, so I'm going to read one called Running. It's another prose block. It was first published relatively recently in X-Ray Lit. And it's a little bit melancholy, but I like it quite a bit. Okay. Running. If I were the person I thought I was this spring evening, I'd walk miles in my mother's old sweatshirt, not out of hatred for my body, but out of sheer sick cold. I would smell manure familiar to me and invented by the dairy midway between my home and the school where I learned I was fat. In that story, I became thin the way that others grow up, gradually, adding with patience restraints, compunctions, ligatures, weights, steel where once was air. In my hometown is a correctional facility, another word for prison. When inmates escaped, we kids hid in a dark corner of the classroom, as in active shooter drills. Afterward, we ate lunch. Today is any other March Wednesday. My arms with bumps are perhaps goose grief. I am feeling perhaps even grief for the girl whose few words concerned the grief, I mean the geese of her sister. Good geese, kind. At our shared correctional facility, she wound mandalas into ink at her bed while I, adjoining, jogged in place. You see, there's a point that you get to when you forget to be hungry and begin to run into traffic. Sometimes I grieve that feeling, the way my mother has tacit promised to grieve me if. At present, the sun is melting and I am about to bike from this place to the apartment in which I keep my sad food and sometimes food for strangers. When I reach the traffic light, I will consider my bicycle, my legs, my white shirt, my bare arms now thick with ink. Being disordered is a manner of being out of order. That is to say, insequential, that is, inconsequential. I think of my mother. I love you. Your sweatshirt is in my closet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kavar. I just had to put that damn in the chat first. Awesome. I would like to hand it over to CM Green now.
Hi, y'all. Cavar, thank you so much for reading those amazing poems. Nat, thanks for having us here tonight. So excited about This Book Will Not Save You. And if anyone hasn't read it yet, it's a great book. I'm going to share some poems tonight that are about mental illness and about gender, which feels fitting in this crowd. So content warning for a couple of these poems. They do deal with bipolar, depression, suicidality, and institutionalization. So this first one is kind of a long prose poem called Et in Arcadia Ego. When I went to the hospital, it was because I knew in my hollow heart that I could die by my own hand. I would imagine all sorts of things at that time, the spring of 2021, like amputation and hanging myself from string lights. These visions came to me without my seeking them, but I didn't push them away, instead welcoming them as my due. Life had gone salt-dried and rattling, bones bleached in the desert, an empty skull, a spinal cord, toothless claws. My mother asked if I would be okay if she went to Pennsylvania for the birth of her granddaughter. I said yes, but I wonder why she believed me when I could barely move from the couch. When my voice had gone limp, my eyes were dim mirrors, my words reflected morbid, acute anhedonia. She didn't know, I suppose, how tempting the glinting kitchen knives looked hanging on the wall. 2 days later, she was gone, and my best friend told me the impossible truth. You need more help than you are getting, she said while we ate pupusas. From there, a current led me to the hospital without my doing anything. Waiting room, busy nurses, anxious mother, and always I carried Brideshead Revisited. I read it in between group therapy sessions and tasteless meals. It carried me to a revival, to a colorful world. The form of novel became a new mother tongue. I took new pills and read old stories. The people were sad and angry there. It became who I am now. I learned truly nothing ends, even the worst parts, even the good. It's words forever. Emergence. I lived. I came back. Everything was still there. On the other side, life, the end of the world overcome. Survival was now possible, perhaps an inevitability. Brideshead Revisited remained on my bookshelf, 3 copies. I thought, now I can write, now I must. Apocalypse averted, I became obsessed with novels, my true salvation. I thought of them as architecture or landscape, bricks and leaves. I thought that someday I would write about the hospital, but not yet. I was never ready because thinking about it reminded me of the truth. The truth that sickness is braided into my skin and periodically gnaws at me. But I live in spite of that. Write, sew, walk, swim, laugh, understand more now. The imperative of my hospital stay was gratitude because I got better and not everyone does. So with gratitude, I now approach this wide and wild world like a child, like a flower. I used to tell myself that everything was a miracle, but I don't think that is true anymore. Instead, everything is what it is, and I try to set metaphors aside when I look at my surroundings. I write about this in novels now and think about reading Brideshead Revisited wearing a teal gown and rubber socks. In that architectural novel, Evelyn Waugh writes, "To know and love one other human being is the root of all wisdom." What happens if that one other human being is yourself and you grow to love yourself after a week in the hospital? What happens when you learn that you can survive the worst thing that has happened to you and the story is not over? Okay. Oh my God, so much in the chat. Whew. Thank you. The next poem I'm going to read is called 2024, February through March, Depressive Episode, because I keep track of all of my mood episodes in a notes app, and that's how I title them. So this is about more, cultural understandings that I have taken in from bad men, just like Evelyn Waugh was a bad man. There's more of that to come. I lost 2 months this year to sad men with guitars and Patrick Melrose, who is just a sad man without a guitar, who is a bad man too, who made me think about Hamlet and the everlasting's canon, which is fixed against self-slaughter. When it's bad, it will never be good again, which Patrick knows, which Hamlet knows, and why do I only understand myself in the context of suicidal men? You could offer a kind answer or a withering one, but I think all the time about the tempest of a man's depression and how bipolar presents differently for men and for women and what it means that I am neither. Recursion is my only recourse, and so I listen to the same song for hours, another suicidal man singing about only things and disparate hearts. Would I desire death if I had never met Hamlet, and would that desire threaten me if I ignored Patrick? Or does the body know without instruction what it needs to silence the predation of circular thought? Show me how to keep masculinity from killing me, how to keep safe from self-destruction, how to keep care of my body, how to keep tomorrow's promises. When I wanted most to die, it didn't matter if I was a man or a woman or a gender fuck or a gender fuck up, because all I knew was a mind that craved knives and a heart that beat twice then stopped. Still, I read about Patrick and I read about Hamlet and I listened to more sad men with guitars who convinced me men knew how to die. At the molten heart of things, everything resembles everything else. That's the horror, said Patrick. And my molten heart cooled and hardened, and it resembled every man's wish for finality overcome. So that poem actually includes the line "without instruction," which is the title of my bipolar chapbook coming out next year with Jake. So excited for that. All right, my next poem is one I wrote on Trans Day of Remembrance. It's called "There Are Major Moves in the Market," in quotation marks. There are major moves in the market, says a curly-haired young man on the beeline to Boston College on the eve of Trans Day of Remembrance. I am trying to get to Brighton where my beloved waits, but the train keeps skipping and the lights blinking out. Major moves, he repeats as the brakes cry for help. I imagine every person I see on the train could be trans. I imagine they could be harboring the same fear. So many lost, so many killed, so many misknown. Now he talks about artificial intelligence. The self-made intelligence of every trans person claiming their own right to be what they are compels me more. I don't want to wait 15 years to get there, he says. I don't want to wait 15 years for an affirmation of life. 15 years from now, will I still hold my beloved all night? The train stops again. The train and I, we know what it means to falter, to wish the tracks were kinder. All the people I gravitate towards are older. Every trans person who is older than me is a treasure. I get off the train a stop early because I am afraid of derailment. That poem is actually forthcoming in Bee Stung. Kind of occurs to me that I don't know if I'm supposed to share a poem out loud that is forthcoming somewhere, but I just did, so thank you. And I think I have time for one more poem. So I'm gonna read this poem called Everything Was Forever Until It Was No More, which is not my title. I stole it from Alexei Yurchak, who wrote a book by that title about the end of the Soviet Union. So this is Everything Was Forever Until It Was No More. Styrofoam was forever, and so was microplastic, and so was American exceptionalism, and so was white supremacy, and so was capitalism, and so was the Democratic Party. So was forever a lie, and should we be surprised? And should revolution come, I will be ready. God grant me the strength to punch my pillows into malleable shapes so my lover sleeps well. God, what hast thou wrought? God, grant me the rot that will take time, take down forever. The gates of heaven are gilded, and I used to buy ticket after ticket, but now God grant me the grace, no, the grit to grip cloud, harp, wing, and all, and bring them to the level of the earth. Blinking sign says heaven now free for all if you are willing to succumb to love. And this, here, now, this writhing, dying snake of an empire, this was forever until it will be no more. No more profit, no more green corporate grinning, no more tearing up the land, no more ignoring those who care for the land, no more death cult, no more industrial complexes, no more complex words built to distract from truth. Complexity is inherent and nuance undersold, but some things are quite simple. Comrade, coalition, compassion, crack of capital's collapse. Nothing is forever. It is no more. No more cadavers, no more bombs, no more violent disregard and complacent violence. Today we begin something entirely new, which will also be forever until it is no more. Forever as an imaginary, as a road towards futures more liberated, towards love. Thank you so much.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Oh my God, y'all were phenomenal. Wow. I was thinking as both Kavar and CM were reading, like how well everything kind of ties into what I'm about to read. So on that note, yeah, let's get started with some reading from This Book Will Not Save You. The first piece I'm going to read is actually the title poem for the book, and is a prose poem as well. This book will not save you. This book will not pry the claws of former lovers out of your gray matter. This book will not pluck the hairs from the places you still can't bear to see them. This book will not hold your hand in the night. It will not keep you steady in the crook of a lover's tattooed musculature. It will not stop you from your listless roaming, rabid-mouthed and eyes bleary. This book will show you the crater of your prefrontal cortex and all the ways it's split at the seams. This book will blindfold you, reveal you nose to nose with yourself, and whisper good luck before it skitters into the abyss. This book will change you for reasons you never so much as sighed at, but this book will not strip you from yourself, your sinew contracting from 27 years of chronic tension. This book will not attempt to baptize you, and thank God, because superstition means you'll never let font water drip down your temples. This book will not show you alternate realities. This book will not birth you again. It will lay you bare as bedside skin at far too young. It will drive forceps into your ribcage in search of truth. It will shed a layer of skin and awaken you, impart that the act of salvation sits in your hands alone. Right. So moving into what I guess I kind of call the meat of the book. So that poem starts before any of the sections. The book is divided into three sections, which is sort of like during, before, and after. They're titled in French, but they basically are during, before, and after. And the during refers to the period of time in which I was having a mental health crisis and was hospitalized. And the before is sort of what led there, and the after is after that. So this piece is called Hospital Mashed Potatoes. And at this point, I should definitely probably provide a content warning for this book as well, because it's, there's a lot going on here. This book discusses borderline personality disorder, alcoholism, institutionalization, probably some other things. I think I'm also reading some pieces that may touch on sexual assault as well. Hospital mashed potatoes for Sandy. Sometime between noon and 1, I am spooning potatoes out of a wax paper bowl. I don't know what day it is. I have just driven halfway over yonder, through suburban Maryland and back every weekday, all month to be here, performing emergency maintenance on my brain. And unfortunately, a paper packet of iodized salt is not enough for these potatoes to taste like anything I actually want for lunch right now. A pat of butter meant for frozen dinner rolls does not sate, but I do chuckle remembering what my mother once said about my grandmother at the end of her life when she lived alone. That for dinner she'd microwave herself a baked potato when her body said cooking wasn't on the agenda. Through mealy bites, I store this moment away, this heartstring that felt no strain until now, but has dragged since I waved a last goodbye through a rehab window 6 months ago. I will not write yet, but when I do, she will still be there. Days of golden breakfast potatoes after sleepovers long behind us both. She will show up on a day like this, remind me not just of our similarity, but our tenacity, what an act of defiance survival can be. Right. The next piece I would like to read is a piece that I wrote while I was working on my MFA at the University of Baltimore. And it was published in Blackstone Whitestone, which if you're not familiar with them, they basically publish like 5 to 8 poems from a singular poet per month. And this was in a series of poems that I had published with them, kind of as like a little mini look into this book. Tandem Tempests. My dilemma, old as flightless fowls have roamed the dirt surface of earth. Which came first, the trauma or the anxiety? Was I dealt blows that made me gnash molars to bone stumps, or was my jaw simply screwed together tight as my Achilles tendons were? Was it how I met death, aged 11? My grandmother, despite a widowmaker, halted his pursuit, so he snatched my friend that winter instead. Is that it? This tremor my fingers fall into, innate or not, is circumstance why they continue to vibrate? Or am I wrong? Am I like this, stoked and thrashing from the womb, choking down nervous murmurs of countless what ifs my mind broaches? Even now, I can't find a time I've known the difference between these two. I can't find a symptom of one it doesn't share with the other. Tandem tempests in a cluttered mind. Hey. This next one is also a prose poem. It was published by Bruiser and is sort of loosely about the experience of receiving feedback on written work about dissociation. Imagine, if you will, that I am dissociating. This is disjointed. This is fragmented. This is coded. This is unclear. This is called dissociation. And if you think I can explain it while caught in the troughs of its relentless swell, then honey, you've got a big storm coming. I am a dripping wound of a human right now. I am a body of shame. I am a genderless ghost seeking revenge. I am a ball of angst and apathy. I perspire in my sleep, even with the air conditioning on and all the blankets thrown off in fury or fear. I consider my brain still under refurbishment. This is listless. This is the tangled mass my favorite gauze pop singer spoke of. This is I am not dead, just floating. This is but I wish I was sometimes. This is all I've known for half a year now. This is a mist finer than fog, and I am adrift without lanterns, without maps, without the whole motor for fuck's sake. I am waiting out the weather because this is an all summer in a day type situation. If I do not see the sun soon, I will die here in an overcast twilight. Yeah. Thanks, y'all. I'm seeing the catching up on the chat and appreciate everything. I'm gonna read some poems now from the like before section. Just a couple because these tend to be a little bit darker and I don't think they like quite read as well. There's also a lot of like really long ones. So this was actually written after one of my authors at Fifth Wheel Press, M.N. James, who wrote a chapbook called Pantoum Stress Disorder. And this is Pantoum for Not Drinking at Home. I declare I don't drink at home, never pour the rye in my corner cabinet, but I close out bars every night. I'm saving myself for more attention. Don't pour the rye in the corner cabinet because I'm saving it for company. I'm saving myself for more attention. I am obsessed with my perceived glamour. Because I'm saving it for company, I collect bottle after bottle to display. I am obsessed with my perceived glamour, right alongside not being the problem. I collect bottle after bottle to display, but not empty. That means I don't drink much, right? Alongside not being the problem, a Manhattan or three never hurt me. I am not empty. That means I don't drink much, but I close out bars every night. A Manhattan or three never hurt me. I still declare I don't drink at home. Great. This next poem is part of kind of like a mini series within the book. I basically took a bunch of, well, this is actually the one that started it. I was very inspired by like Crayola crayon names, particularly the wild strawberry being fraise sauvage, was just like a very interesting combination of words to me in French. And so I took basically the colors from the bi flag and the colors from the trans flag in their corresponding Crayola colors and wrote a bunch of poems in their French translations as the titles. So this is Fraise Sauvage, and yeah. I was reared restless and mutated to savage as clover patch strawberries in the backyard. My parents lied and said they were poisonous. I could never be poisonous, never crooked cord, but once I turned venomous, there was no halting it. I used venom like rationed water, only when desperate, only when he dug his barbs into flesh as yet unblemished, only when he spoke for the sole purpose of drawing blood. Gashes so deep they blurred my vision and sent my fist colliding with his temple, with the cartilage of an ear that would ring for 5 minutes following the onslaught of emotional damage. It's here I look back and realize this will never go away. There will always be a pipe wrench clamped around my guts. When it tightens, I will always dole out lashes with my tongue and maybe my half-clenched fists. My first instinct will always be ruinous, and it will be years from this particular cataclysm before I have words for this segment of my wiring. The way the doctor says borderline implies a transience, but I am rooted here. I am the cracks in the soil. I am the coming flood. Eight. Next piece is also a little bit about BPD, but it is also a little bit about alcoholism and kind of the way that the two manifested together when I was in my early 20s and still like a very active alcoholic. This is what consumes you. Does a rail margarita make you lose your mind, or do you just have borderline personality disorder? You know, the kind where a drink makes sitting at a bar more bearable. It's not the loneliness that consumes you, but the chatter of those with companions. It's not the loneliness, but it is. The way a brain feels a bottle's contents flow through amygdala like a tequila-tinged accelerant. The corners of liquor-slicked lips as they turn downward with each unanswered text message. The smell of rejection and cheap sour mix lurching out of open mouth once stomach screeches to a halt in bathroom stall. It's not the loneliness, but the control, the feeling that you can't make him call back, but you can buy yourself another consolation prize in a thick-walled tulip glass. You can stew in a slurry of your own regrets as you suck the last drops of store-brand orange juice out of melting ice. You can still look yourself in the mirror and insist it's not the drinking that consumes you. This is the last one from the before section. It is after one of my favorite Fantagram songs, Run Run Blood. This is Follow Me into a Swarm of Bees. I forget who told me it's supposed to be rare to dream in color, and I don't know if it's true, but I am still one rare bird because I don't think it's supposed to be so vivid all the time. Don't think night terrors are supposed to transpose into day visions so strong I foam at the corners of chapped lips. I swallow every word I don't believe, and I believe the worst. Logic stings like paper cuts in the late April breeze, and I yell and I curse and I cry until someone grabs both flailing arms and, when I protest, explains We don't want people to think you're crazy. And I could say this is my first panic attack, but it's not. And besides, there's more to it than panic, more like flashbacks and not knowing how to be touch starved at 13, how to let yourself be rejected when you have abandonment issues, and no one knows why you can't control your emotions, and no one will know for over a decade. But anyway, my nightmares are still in color, and they still take the shape of a shadow that says I will never love you without limits. Thanks, y'all. Moving into the relative joy of the after section now. This is a poem that I really love to read. I feel like I've read it at like every reading that I've read at in really the last year. This is Praise You. It's after the Fatboy Slim song of the same name. I have to celebrate you, baby. Body of mine I've never much cared for, but lately feel hell-bent on cradling in the supple sublime of trans joy. Our first 2 decades were written by the world that reared you, by the grasp of every Jack Rogers Vineyard Vines classmate had on your baby brainstem. It would be easy enough to say you're not woman after all that, but twice as hard to admit there is any ounce of the masculine in your bloodstream after every man you knew was elated to enlarge you like a projection. Circle each spot that made you less than flawless femme. How lucky we are now to settle for and into nothing, dive headlong into the void where gender goes to dissolve. Right. Getting towards the end of what I'm gonna read, I only have 3 more poems. This one is was published actually by Cavar when Cavar was still editing for Stone of Madness. Is also a prose poem, and is kind of about the experience of realizing I wanted to be sober. Um, so this is Mississippi River or Delaware Bay. There's only one ex I talked to, and last time we talked, I told him I was California sober and he stopped responding. The other week I flew over the last town I saw him in, the wood-paneled Memphis barbecue joint, likely somewhere in the Sim City view, the place where I ordered a Jack and Ginger and clacked my gloss black press-ons against the laminate table. It's been almost 5 years, and this morning co-star told me to write a love poem to myself, and as much as I've screwed my own head on back by the sheer strength of my own 2 hands, I don't think I learned to extend that emotion to myself until I was 20 days into dry January, and flame flicker reflected in the wall of windows caught sight of my sober self in the dark, and how, not unlike water, I've forged a ravine for myself in a thicket of torn cuticles and heart palpitations. How I happened upon enough barriers to now settle in my gaze into the sea green meat of my own irises and say, by all means, evolve. I give you permission. Right. This piece is a duplex and was also kind of written in the MFA program that I just graduated from. This is Duplex's final form. I chose joy based on the alternative, a sorrow sutured to my soft tissue. And when I unstitched sutures to face sorrow, for a while I steeped in it. I saw myself steep a while in the way I saw myself, maelstrom of doubt spun by self-hatred. Hated and doubted by most, I spun out, hoping to be the right girl for the outside world. As a little girl, the world seems all right, but too many lovers tore me down and I pushed myself down, too torn apart to love. I won't let them shape me anymore, won't change my shape so they'll allow me. Joy comes easy when I've seen the alternative. Right, this last one I've got is after one of my favorite songs by one of my favorite bands. It is after Under the Milky Way by The Church. And I do feel like it is kind of like an exemplar of the book in some ways as well. It's also the last piece in the book. This is Something Shimmering. Indeed, despite my destination, I have been led to this precipice, this limit of language and maybe perception, this edge of a valley where queers like me are free to bask in moonlight. My therapist said reaching a limit is a catalyst for change, and I took a battering ram to the barrier, the one I'd never seen through a haze of my want to belong, my chain of actions that made me girl but kept me cradled in comfort. It should have killed me. But once I could no longer stomach my version of feminine, I leapt at different. I glided into the valley a mourning dove and stayed to become a peacock. The destination had always seemed bleak, back when I thought I'd seen everything. Despite the path of chaos I've trod across galaxies, I've been led to a quiet sort of ecstasy, embraced a selfhood I never saw coming. On the other side of a curtain of stars, I trace nebulae with shaky fingers. I don't need to wander any longer. I have the map now. Thanks for coming out, y'all. I'm gonna drop links to the book in the chat. Nope, that's not the link to the book. Hang on. Something's still stuck in my clipboard. One moment. But I am gonna stop the recording now, and I just want to thank you all again for coming out.